Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Samra A. Stevenson. I'm the founder and CEO of S.A. Stevenson Law Offices, Wills on Wheels, Office Without Walls, and SAS Fit Practice. I am a practicing Maryland attorney, and just a little about me. I've been practicing for got barred in 2011, but I've been practicing. So I've been practicing for a while, but I've been out on my own as a solo for about 8 years now. I'm sorry, for 6 years now. And I founded my practice 8 years ago and have slowly developed a brand around virtual and remote practices, which we're talking about managing remote teams today. My estate planning portion of my practice is called Wills on Wheels. It's just the first virtual and mobile estate planning business model in Maryland. And I've managed remote teams since approximately 2016, large teams, small teams for different reasons. And I'll get into that during my presentation in terms of how that affects management and whatnot, and especially in a post-pandemic world. And I work a lot with clients in my regular function as an attorney, but I also work with business owners and encouraging business owners to transform their work and their life by using technology and innovation. When I went out on my own in 2016, it was after having worked in a lot of different capacities, nonprofit world, clerking for judges. Actually, when I got out of law school, I had gone to law school, power to the people, fist in the air, wanting to do civil rights law. But when I came out, the job market was what it was. And I thought maybe I'll become a prosecutor, clerked for a judge in Baltimore City, saw some autopsy photos and quickly changed my mind. When I left from that position, kind of ended up down in DC at Arnold and Porter, working big firm, a lot of quality control, priv logs, coding, and the like. And, that was where things really changed for me, because it became a very unhealthy lifestyle, working 7 to 9 o'clock every day, that competitive, having to put it all on the floor, leave it all on the floor, and started, my health began to deteriorate, drinking every day. Literally had to take 4 double shots of espresso during the day to keep up. And then that was, followed by bottles of wine at home to try and take things down at night. And I'm telling my story as part of, how I ended up talking about this stuff. And that's mainly because as I saw my health start to deteriorate physically, it became very clear to me that either I was going to have to stop being an attorney and stop practicing and find a way to practice that worked for me. And so when I went out on my own and started my own practice, the idea was that quality of life came first, health came first. And when I started incorporating technology, I saw that it was possible to not just live a better lifestyle working for myself, but also to do things like travel, which became my medicine. And, I started hashtagging happiness matters because my happiness came first, and I wanted to advocate the use of technology for other practitioners for the same reason. But I also saw that the use of technology made me a more effective attorney by creating access to justice for clients. And, I've expanded that brand into the other things you saw, and I'll bring up that slide at the end too, so you can connect with my services. But that expanded my brand into Office Without Walls, which is the current trademark, and allowed me to start offering services as a transformation coach, really encouraging people to transform their businesses by using technology and innovation to make that jump, improve their quality of life, improve the services they offer to people. For example, with the Wills on Wheels, we're able to provide remote and virtual estate planning to people all over Maryland, teaming up with other attorneys in other states to go beyond that as well. And since the pandemic, and I should also note that, I recorded a lot of my journey. So in 2017, for example, I went to 4 countries, 10 cities in 90 days, didn't close the office. The following spring, traveled up and down the West Coast, Arizona, California, Washington State for a month, and didn't close the office. And I've kind of made a point of showing that you can do everything remotely. And the pandemic has changed things because we all went remote there for a little bit, but the message remains the same for me. Through the use of technology and innovation, it's possible to transform how you work, how you live, and how you provide quality services to your clients. So that brings me to today's subject, because the focus has kind of shifted in terms of the advice that I give to people, and what I'm seeing is not so much having to convince people that remote work is feasible now and that you can run a remote office, but how do we manage a remote office in a way that's effective? And I was listening to Michael Bloomberg speak last week at a conference that I went to in National Harbor, and he was noting that 61% of businesses have begun remote practices, incorporating some kind of remote practices since the pandemic, and compare that to around 22% pre-pandemic. It's a substantial change. And I would be remiss if I didn't address retention and the Great Resignation as a part of this conversation, because I think that's a lot of what I see people struggling with regards to holding on to remote teams. Either they've gotten new remote staff, or they've converted their existing staff to remote and they're losing people, or having a tough time keeping people motivated. And so let's address that. The Great Resignation, most people are aware of the four leading factors that have driven people to be resigning from positions. And that would be toxic culture, working environments that are no longer conducive to people feeling satisfied with their work, change in values with staff. And a lot of this came about during the pandemic for various reasons. Either people identified that they wanted to have a better quality of life from being home, or their employers or managers, that failed to pivot in ways that were effective, and kind of added to a toxic culture to work environment. Also the same with regards to burnout, also people being underpaid, and then lack of freedom, which can also be tied to people, management and businesses failing to pivot and really understand how to effectively manage remote teams. As a part of my story, I'll tell you, I had managed a team of 6 at the time the pandemic hit, and we were kind of uniquely situated for what was going on anyway, because we were already kind of practicing that way. My senior paralegal lived in Lesby, Maryland. My office is in Columbia, Maryland. I had other team members kind of all scattered all over, and we were kind of uniquely situated. But even with those practices already in place, burnout can still happen unless you're being mindful of what's going on with your team and how your leadership functions and how you're managing everybody. And so for me, that led to a restaffing around October of 2021 for various reasons that it would take too long to get into. But and so that's really kind of changed my focus to being an effective leader as part of expelling the possibility of burnout and toxic work environments, because as a leader, it starts with me, obviously. So let's talk about attracting the right team. Whether you are looking for new staffers or going to be looking for them at some point in time. One thing to note is that, with those leading factors with regards to the Great Resignation, the focus has really moved to the employee experience. And this goes beyond Gen Z. We all know how they are. The focus is people have had enough with corporate culture, not respecting their values, not respecting their time, not respecting their work-life balance, and they're demanding more of their employers and of their working environments. So we need to pay attention to that. It begins with the people we attract that we're going to, form into part of our team and part of our remote group. So, getting clear about your mission, your vision, and your values, and getting, not just clear about that, but getting a commitment from this potential new hire at the interview level, not waiting for that to be something that's communicated after you hire them, and kind of maybe not even going further in interviews until you are clear about the two of you being on the same page about the mission, vision, and values. So what is your remote culture, and what is your purpose in having remote remote staff or remote practices as a part of your organization. Consider even reorganizing job descriptions so that when you're, bringing people in for interviews, it's being made clear to them what the experience they're going to have as a part of your team. Are they going to experience a better quality of life, freedom to work certain days away from the office, maybe all the time away from the office? What is the culture that they're getting into so that you're attracting the right people to your organization? And, being clear about that mission, vision, and value, and communicating that early and often kind of still ties into what I've always believed, is that if you build it, they will come. My first virtual employees that I hired, they had a need to work remotely. And so that's always what I'm looking for, is more than just a desire to be at home. Do you have a need? Like they had special needs children. They had reasons why they needed to be at home. They appreciated the value that I offered in giving them remote access and the flexibility they needed to be with their family. If you communicate that mission, vision, and value, you will attract the talent that you need. And from there, it becomes maintaining and putting the proper tools and systems in place, which I'll talk about as this presentation continues. One thing to consider, because we want to start setting the tone from the beginning with new hires and remote teams, is entry interview questions. And this not only helps a new hire feel welcomed, valued, and heard, but also helps you understand how you can maintain relationships with them and retain their talent, not only retain, but develop their talent while they're with you. So questions like, what made you join our company or organization? What kind of environment helps you to thrive? What are your goals, not only for working here, but for the long term? And this is just good leadership, being in touch with what their goals are, how you can help them develop those goals, how they tie into work that they're doing for you directly, all important. And if you're being a good leader and walking them through these things and really empowering them, then you're checking in on their goals and how they're progressing with them. Again, how they're tying in with the work that they're doing for you, how you can feed that, how you can help them develop, and they're more likely to stick with you and also buy into your mission, your vision, and being a part of the culture and doing good, solid work for you. And then it doesn't matter where they're working, whether they're working in an office or working remotely. I also threw in there, what is the worst boss you ever had, just to get an idea of what you want to try and avoid in terms of practices. And what we really need to avoid is this issue of languishing, right? And it's understandable how this came up during the pandemic. It's, often caused by isolation and a disconnect from deeper meaning of work, factors that, the pandemic intensified. But languishing defined as a sense of emptiness and joyousness, aimlessness, and really need to address this, because not addressing this, not thinking about how we fight this can lead to, languishing can lead to depression and mental health deterioration. And when we think about it like that, that's also deterioration of a healthy work environment for you and your team when there's languishing going on. And so, that really starts with developing a mindset that mental health is a part of work, looking at well-being at work, because forming and successfully managing a strong remote team begins with acknowledging these types of problems and then incorporating solutions that allow remote teams to thrive with the business and alongside what you're doing. So how do we commence living in the solution? One of the major issues that people are, one of the traps that people fell into the most during the pandemic was not setting proper boundaries. So addressing failures to set boundaries by setting healthy ones. Interesting statistic that I heard recently was that on average, people reported checking emails on their phones 73 times a day during the height of the pandemic. How do we stop people from getting work fatigue, cutting out Zoom fatigue, cutting down on a quote unquote need for meetings, and using tools to make work more visible, which I'll get into in a second. Keeping work visible is essential with remote teams for a lot of different reasons, but cutting down on Zoom fatigue is also one of those. How many unnecessary meetings are we having on Zoom? a lot of people have cut down on that, but that was a problem, especially at the height of the pandemic. Setting boundaries as a part of the remote working, as part of your company culture. So maybe no checking emails on the weekend, no checking emails after 5 o'clock, really encouraging attorneys to set healthy boundaries for themselves. And of course, that really does start with you. So are you practicing those same things? And at the end of my presentation, we'll talk a lot about your leadership and making sure that you are actually demonstrating healthy practices for your team. But also one that's very important is connecting people with their purpose and the impact of their work. We're not in the same environment. We're not working in the same office space. Are they able to see how they are directly impacting what's going on with your business in terms of the quality experience you're providing to clients, the happiness and joy that you're bringing to people, the way you're being of service to others? Make the effort to directly connect them, let them see how their work made things better for whoever you're being of service to. I try and do that now with my VAs. Actually, one of my clients actually wrote a review recently and gave a shout out to one of my VAs because, we had kind of made that connection between the two of them, and she understood the value of her work, and she was happy about that and was definitely happy to see her name in the review on the website. So finding virtual assistants, which is different, not necessarily, can be different than actually finding like remote paralegals and whatnot, and remote staffers, but virtual assistants are an essential part of remote teams. They do some of the drudge work. They are sometimes take up, things that you need to outsource so you can be the CEO of your company and not an employee in your company. So I want to touch on finding those virtual assistants first. There's ways to hire them directly from the Philippines, for example, onlinejobs.ph. Depending on the type of work that you're trying to get somebody to do, maybe you're doing you need a social media VA to take over your Instagram post, freelance work for that, or create websites, those types of things. Upwork and Fiverr are good resources. And then finally, using staffing companies, which I really like because it does cut down on some of the HR responsibilities with regards to managing your team. And for those, I would recommend groups like Get Staffed Up and Pineapple Staffing. Get Staffed Up is really actually a great resource if you haven't checked them out. I would recommend if you're interviewing for candidates, making sure you get a video submission from them explaining why they're good at the work they do, why they want to do it. Being able to see that face before you actually hire them is important. And don't be timid about you letting people go if they're not a good fit. Slow to hire, quick to fire is the expression that people use. When it comes to hiring remote employees or paralegals, not virtual assistants who are doing the administrative work, but those core team members, some things to think about: focus on project management skills. Are they organized? Do they pay attention to detail? Again, I mentioned this before, reason greater than themselves for doing the work. Why are they, is it they just want to work from home, or do they have a reason why they need to not be in the office? Is there something else going on that's greater than them and that they need to be attending to? These are the most effective people because they really value the opportunity you're giving them to work remotely, to have that freedom, and they're going to give you the best return on investment. Probably something that was more true prior to the pandemic, but something that still should be looked for when you're trying to hire for a remote team that's going to be effective. 3, responsiveness and strong communication skills. Do they communicate fully? Do they leave holes in their communication? These are all things you can look for during the interview process. Paying attention to how responsive they are to emails as part of the interview process or the onboarding process. And are they natural problem solvers and resourceful? Also things that can be addressed during the interview process. Are they going to be able to take the initiative to go and find solutions without you because they can't pop over to your office and ask you a question? You don't need one more email in your inbox. Are they going to be able to problem solve and figure things out without necessarily having to tap you, which ultimately leads to you feeling tapped out when you've been tapped too much? So if you'd like to check out one of my YouTube videos, I'd encourage you to head over to the SAS Fit Practice page. There's a lot of videos I have regarding hiring remote work, paperless practices, those types of things. All right. Short little note, and I know we're attorneys, but even attorneys need reminders sometimes about classifying remote team members. Very important. Just because you have a remote employee does not mean you have a 1099 contractor. Please keep that in mind. The difference between a W-2 and a 1099, failing to classify people correctly can lead to a lot more problems with regards to taxes and unemployment claims, those types of things. So when do you have a W-2 and when do you have a 1099? It really comes down to how much control you have over the work they're doing. Again, just because they're working remotely does not mean that you have a 1099 contractor. If you are requiring them to be available during certain hours, if you are requiring them to check in at certain times, if you are allowing them to use if you're providing electronics to them, computers, scanners, equipment, you are headed towards the classification of a W-2 and not a 1099. This is an important classification to be clear about. If this is something that you're unsure about, whether you have a 1099 or a W-2, you should consult with a business law attorney. You should consult with a CPA. There are also tests available online through the IRS. Simply Google W-2 versus 1099. I think it's one of the first search hits that comes up from doing that, and take the test that the IRS provides. Again, just because you have a remote employee that's not sitting in an office does not mean that you have a 1099. And you need to be mindful of that and treat them accordingly. The onboarding process looks a lot different for them. They're not going to get employee handbooks. They're not going to get the same types of things that W-2 would get, but their onboarding should still encourage a sense of belonging. They do belong to the organization. It just changes how you're interacting with them on a daily basis and how much control you have over what they do and when they do it. 1099s are very much, you set a goal for them and they determine how it gets done. For example, my outreach intake coordinator is a 1099. He knows what he's supposed to do each month. We meet, once, we meet at the beginning of the month on a Saturday to go over the outreach goals, to go over what the social media posts are going to be, and we have check-ins, but he's not required to report at any certain time or be available between any set hours. He's not required to be on site anywhere. He is required to show up for certain things, but that's part of the project that he has working for me. W-2, on the other hand, so a paralegal for me, even though she doesn't report to an office site, is expected to answer the phone between 8:30 and 5, is expected to show up for morning meetings every morning at 8:30 on Zoom, and is very much, her movements are very much controlled by the things I've set out. So that's a W-2 classification as opposed to a 1099. Again, if you're unsure about this, please check with a business law attorney or check with a CPA who can help you understand why this is important for tax purposes. What you don't want is to misclassify somebody and then have that come up later and have yourself in a position where you're having to pay taxes that weren't paid previously, or even worse, having somebody come up with a disability, request for disability after having been misclassified and creating a mess for yourself and your business. Let's look at the onboarding process for remote teams. It's important to get an early start, giving them a sense of belonging, supporting feelings of inclusiveness by getting them online and in touch with your systems early, setting up their accounts, making sure they understand what the different ways to connect with other parts of your team are. Provide them a digital employee handbook, and that should include communication about that company culture, mission, vision. You've already connected with them at the interview process for this. This is just a continuation of restating it often. So state it early, state it often. Give them a digital version of your handbook to look back at. Again, creating a sense of belonging for them, letting them know where they can get in touch with other, members of your team, providing onboarding through video connection. 50% of employees are more productive with a strong support, face-to-face interactions as part of the onboarding process. And those video tutorials can be essential to letting them, see your face and hear your instructions, but also they can refer back to those and, get a better sense of your systems as they work remotely for you. I'll go over some of the tools you can use for creating those videos, and they can, the tools I use allow me to record my screens, walk them through systems, walk them through software, walk them through practices, but also allow them to see my face and they can engage with me virtually as a part of the process. Initiate professional development and personal growth from the start. Again, checking in with what their goals are. What are they hoping to gain while they work for you? What are they hoping to gain overall in the future? And how are you going to implement making sure that they're continuing to develop while they're with you? And encourage collaborative learning and getting in touch with other team members and becoming a part of the community that you have. Those video trainings and introductions, the two apps that I like the most are Loom and Cloud App. Both are free. Check them out. There are versions for your PC and versions for your phone. Again, with the Loom, for example, you can record your screen and literally walk people through how to get, well, not just on your phone, but on your PC, but literally walk people through how to use applications, how to use software. You can record your voice. You can have a video with your face in the bottom of the screen, talking to them at the same time. Cloud App, much the same. Again, those are both free of charge, but there are other applications you can check out as well: warmwelcome.com, Vidyard, Snagit, Vimeo. Just get a feel for what they do and how you can incorporate them into those kind of training videos that you can then have somewhere people can refer back to, people can learn on their own time. Definitely promotes efficiency for you as a manager and allows people to feel more engaged with the training process. Virtual assistants, going back to virtual assistants for a second, are as effective as how you use them. So delegating tasks is really important, and delegating the right tasks is important. With regards to that, looking at the 4 zones of productivity, which is something that I got from a book by Michael Hyatt called Free to Focus. And there are 4 zones to productivity, 1 being the desire zone, 2, the distraction zone, disinterest zone, number 3, and the drudgery zone. And so the desire zone, what work am I passionate about and am I good at the same time? That's your desire zone, that's your gold zone, that's where you want to be. Those are the type of tasks that you want to be able to focus on. Your distraction zone, what work do I like to do, but I'm not proficient at, right? Those tasks that might keep you distracted because you like to do it, but it takes you longer because you're not that good at it. Disinterest zone, what am I good at, but have little interest in doing? And lastly, your drudgery zone, which is the worst of both worlds. What work am I least interested in and least proficient at? And these are the tasks you need to outsource. These should be looked at on a weekly, daily basis in terms of what's on the agenda, what needs to get done. And these are the tasks you want to give to your virtual assistant to make sure that you are staying out of the day-to-day. You're more involved with the growing of your business, being the CEO, not the employee. But I just want to side note that while you're giving these drudgery zone tasks to virtual assistants, it's also important to check in with them and making sure they don't feel like you're just giving them all of the junk, all of the trash, making sure that, there's some interest in, again, getting back to, their value and with the organization and making sure they feel engaged. We're giving them that drudge work. We want them to do a good job. So let's make sure that we're engaging them in positive ways and making them part of the team culture as well, and making sure we know what is going on with them. Organizing and motivating your teams, 5 components. that I'd suggest more than this, but these are the important ones. Meet regularly, but not too often. Again, no Zoom fatigue. We don't want to get people bored with meetings. There are different ways to make sure you're communicating about work, and I'll get into that in a second. But do have regular meeting times. Before the pandemic, my team would meet virtually once a week, twice a week, depending on the team member. And then we had ways of communicating in between those, but then we would also, and those were virtual meetings, but we'd also meet once a month, face-to-face at the office. We called that family dinner. That was a time to really kind of, help people feel connected. And really those meetings would start with just talking about how everybody was doing in their own personal lives before we even got into business stuff and goals for the organization. But they were regular expected meetings, meeting times, and times for people to engage. And that's important because we're capable of communicating about the work without having meetings, but really seeing people, being in touch with them is an important part of, keeping that motivation with the teams. Keeping work visible, which is really essential, like I already said, with remote work for so many reasons, and I'll jump into that a little bit moving forward, but making sure everybody knows how they are contributing and how others are contributing to the business, to the organization. Again, if we were in a workplace environment, this would be more obvious. You can see people doing the work, you can see how hard they're working. But when people are not actually face-to-face, it's easy for them to lose touch with a sense of what other people are doing. And that is a breeding ground for resentment, misunderstandings, all kinds of stuff. And keeping work visible really helps people understand not just their contributions to the whole, but other people's contributions to the whole, and a sense of community. And we can use technology and systems to do that. And I'll get into some of the ones that are popular and the ones that I find most effective. Communicate promptly and with complete information. So, keeping in mind, people don't see exactly what you're doing or how long you've spent on it. Those types of things. If you're the remote, if you're a member of the remote team, you need to make sure that you are giving all of the information and that you're doing it in a time efficient way so that people aren't guessing what's going on next. They can't see you. Again, creating that, that feel of an office environment because we don't have that physical feel. Make expectations known, create benchmarks, hold people accountable, and that includes yourself as the leader. Establish space for work culture and community to develop. So this looks like things like the fireside chat and Slack, I think is a fireside chat, jam boards with Microsoft Teams, different places for people to interact and create that community feel amongst themselves. Again, we had those family meetings once a month. Depending on the different softwares that you're using, most of them have a way to have a community space where people can feel like they're part of a team and can contribute and feel heard, which is very important. Making sure that everybody feels heard and are valued as a part of working with you. So keeping work visible, why? Again, I was getting into this, promoting understanding about what's going on, who's working on what, how people are part of the team and what they're contributing. And also reducing on the potential for resentment and conflict because Sally doesn't think that Peter's doing as much work as she's doing because she can't see it because he was out. She heard he was out at lunch, whatever, not sitting at his desk for a particular period of time. The idea being just making sure everybody understands that we're all contributing to the whole. Making sure there's no misunderstandings about who's doing what, and making sure there's no overlap on work as well. So some of the tools I'll get into using are things like Monday.com and Asana and those types of workflow softwares that allow teams to communicate, but they also allow you to streamline communication. So as I'll demonstrate soon, communicating about tasks and the projects that you're working on cuts down on a need for an additional email, for example. I very much prefer for my teams to use software to communicate the progression of the tasks rather than sending me an email, because I've already gotten 200 emails today. I really don't need another one. More importantly, I don't need an email that's got a whole bunch of people copied on it. So communicating, streamlining communication about projects, and again, eliminating Zoom fatigue and unnecessary meetings about tasks and projects that are going on. We can all see the progress of tasks and who's working on it and how things are going, what's needed, how we can jump in, how we can be a part of the whole. What are some of those tools I mentioned already? Monday.com, Asana. I started off with Asana, and I'll say that it's developed quite a bit since I started using it back in 2016, 17 is when I started using it, and it's evolved since I left to go to Monday.com. And I'll get into showing you why I prefer Monday.com for various reasons, again, with visibility and function. I think those are very important things with regards to the software you choose. Monday.com, for example, allows for integrations. Integrations are things like when a task is marked done, the system automatically emails somebody else or the next person in line telling them that they need to get started on the next project, which eliminates my need, again, streamlining communication, to get involved with sending another email or asking somebody to do something. I can mark something is done and emails are sent to Brian and Amy to start working on their parts of the task. And that's something called an integration. The other thing I like about Monday.com is its visual components in terms of how it kind of interacts with you marking things done. For example, if I mark something done, there's confetti that goes out and it's a celebration. I mean, it's a minor kind of thing, but it's important when we're kind of working on our own remotely, kind of encouraging, an excitement about the work getting done, because that feel or that company feel, that in-person feel isn't there to celebrate. Again, minor, but it does matter. Smart Sheets, also an option. Slack. Trello is something I really encourage for your own personal organization. So you can do that with teams, but it's also a great way to organize yourself as an individual as well. Here are just some examples, some screenshots of what the software looks like if you haven't seen it. Most of these platforms have the ability to access them from your PC, but also your phone, which is really important. The task management by, creating, organizing tasks by team members, assigning different team members to different things, different projects. The ease of which you can create things mobily from your phone in terms of creating new tasks or projects, having conversations about those, again, not one more email that's going to be in your inbox, but being able to watch the progress of the work that's getting done and communicate about it in real time, with creating more clutter or missing emails. All an essential part of making sure you're organizing your team and keeping them motivated. We've switched to Monday.com. Here's a screenshot of our active case list. And you can see, you can organize things with regards to how you want to have things marked. These all can be customized. When things are done, they get marked green. Again, that confetti goes off, minor thing, but really important when we're trying to make sure we're keeping people interested and engaged, including ourselves. And everybody can see here, anybody who logs in, any of my team members who log in can see what they're assigned to, where we are in the process, adding dates, when things are due back. For example, discoveries due back by this time. I literally just got a message before I started this that said from one of my VAs that she finished the good faith letter because she saw that the discovery was due back. Not that one right there, but she saw the discovery was due back. She went ahead and made the good faith letter. I didn't have to give that direction. Everybody knows what's being worked on. And again, not another email in my inbox cluttering things. So create different dashboards for different types of work. So we have a family law dashboard, estate planning dashboard, business law. And then we have just something for marketing webinars, which is what my 1099 my outreach person uses to make sure I know which webinars, which presentations are coming up like today's. And then I like my active case list because it allows me to see everything that's being worked on and keep inventory on that. Trello, which is a great app that is available both, again, on your PC and on your phone, but I really like the phone version. the cool thing about Trello is the interactive way you can move tasks from one board to another. So, for example, each one of these entries under preparing to present, for example, if you were to put your finger on it and move it, you can move it to a different panel. So if you are working on something, getting something done, and you want to move it and mark it as done, you physically move it with your finger on your phone. That interactive portion kind of helps you feel more engaged with the work, and making sure you're keeping track of it. I use Trello for my own personal planning, really. So when I'm packing for a trip, for a conference, I'm creating my list in here to make sure I have everything. It allows you to kind of personalize things with backgrounds. So, one trip was to San Francisco, and you can see the beach stuff in the background, kind of makes things more fun and keeps you engaged again. A big part of keeping remote teams efficient is going to be encouraging paperless practices. All of these suggestions that I have for you really require the first one, which is pushing past comfort zones. And, conversations about this were much more difficult pre-pandemic, but I still find that people resist getting rid of paper, which if you're working remotely is really important for so many reasons. First, if you're working with a team, everybody needs to be able to see what's going on. And so scanning is something that's really important. But more importantly, if you're working remotely, a lot of times we don't have the same amount of space we had in a traditional office setting. And if you're collecting papers and letting them get jumbled up and you're getting disorganized, you're doing yourself a disservice as a remote worker. I also travel a lot. And so the last thing I need is to travel with a whole set of papers, which, to be honest with you, when I first started this, even though I was really trying to be paperless, I would still take my files with me. And I really had to wean myself off of this. So that's why I'm saying, from a matter of personal experience, push past comfort zones, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and practice makes perfect with this stuff. So, maybe you've started subscribing to paperless billing notifications, finish it, make sure all of your notifications and all of your billing is paperless. Making sure you're switching to e-sign and e-forms in all areas of your practice. So are you collecting e-signatures now? Or are you still getting wet signatures for all of your things? You're allowed to actually file things with e-signatures now. If you're not familiar with the Maryland rules, get familiar with them. But also use e-forms, e-intake forms as a part of your practice for streamlining and being more efficient just with your clients, because most firm management systems now have e-intakes, e-forms, where your client actually inputs their information that can not only be available to you in a digital format, and you can pull it from anywhere if you need it, but more importantly, information and inputs that can help you cut down on work in terms of creating documents for them later, generating emails for them later, because you've inputted the information, and these systems can now spit out emails with their names in the header already that you don't need to do. Or if you're using things like LawYaw, for example, create form documents for you like Discovery that don't require you to input their information into them. Instead, that's already been done, and you're cutting down on the time. You're also creating a more efficient process that's less likely to see mistakes, because you're not cutting and pasting or maybe mistaking names or missing places you need to change things in the standard documents that you create over and over again. So switch to e-signing, e-forms, e-intake, all of those things as a way of not only cutting down on work for you and cutting down on clutter, but being more efficient and more exact and providing a better quality of service for your client. Invest in at least one quality scanner. My recommendation is going to be for you to get the Fujitsu ScanSnap. I hands down will promote that every time I speak. There are plenty of scanners out there, and if that's not something you like, the next option I would tell you to go with is an Epson, one of the Epson scanners in terms of portable ones. But the Fujitsu ScanSnap, the IX600 is currently what I have. I also have an IX500 that I use with the mobile estate planning. We actually take the documents to the client for signings. We scan everything on site. The scanner can scan 60 pages in 30 seconds back and front, color, scan to your phone. It's very efficient. It doesn't jam. and it gets the job done. And then I have another one that sits on my desk. That's the IX600. And they also has wireless, so you don't need cords, all of that. So invest in at least one quality scanner and come up with a scanning policy. I didn't include that in the slide here, but a scanning policy and a shredding policy. So scan those documents, make sure they're scanned, put them in a central storage cloud systems, put them somewhere on your computer with backups, and then don't hang on to the paper after that. That took me a little bit of adjusting to when I first got started with the paperless practice too, because that security of having the actual paper there was nice. But let go of that paper, put a shredding policy in place. So every, if it makes you feel better, hold on to it for 30 days just to make sure. But make sure you get rid of the paper at some point and make sure that you're doing it in a way that is respecting client privacy and is in keeping with industry standards, depending on your practice areas. Choose a centralized cloud storage space that enhances security and group access capabilities. Again, it should be secure. I'll go over kind of the evolution of what I've used and why, but also it should be something that everybody can access. Are you using Clio and that's your firm management system? And so then you can share it, you can store it there and share it with the client at the same time. I personally use Clio, share it with the client there, but I use a different system for a central access point for the team, because not everybody needs to be looking into the client's file in Clio. And we can have a different place where it's secured, not just secured, but backed up and free from any kind of threat of ransomware and those types of things. Link your cloud storage spaces with your mobile devices. Make sure when you're choosing a cloud storage space, whether that's OneDrive or Google Docs, whatever it is, make sure that it can sync with your mobile devices so that when you are on the road and on the go, you can use one of the, I'm also recommending getting a free mobile scanner to scan documents and keep yourself engaged and then upload them to whatever your cloud storage space is. I've done presentations where I run through my phone, like screenshots of my phone and how you can run your practice from your phone. I'm not doing that today. So I will tell you that Genius Scan is one of the ones I recommend for your free mobile scanner. Genius Scan, Tiny Scanner is also another one. Genius Scan Plus, which allows you to do e-signatures as well. Genius Scan, the basic one is free. Genius Scan Plus with the e-signatures is $4, but it's a one-time payment and there are no in-app purchases. So it's a good way to go. Make innovation a part of the company culture. So, you need to be practicing these things because it really begins with your own practices that contribute to the company culture. You're demonstrating this as a leader and a manager for the team, and then encourage people to stick with it. You stick with it first, and then you require your team to. It's, getting out of that comfort zone is not easy, and it does take time. Like I said, practice makes perfect, but you have to, get started somewhere. And you can't really kind of push people to do these kind of things if you're not doing them yourself. So you got to model exactly what you're trying to do or trying to get the culture to be with the practice. Some different ways that you can encourage paperless practices, making sure people understand Adobe Acrobat functions, comment bars, drawing tools, sticky notes, text comments, lines and shapes. Have fun with it. Encourage them to be creative. When I was traveling a lot, kind of editing documents, I was trying to encourage my team to make sure they were using functions in Adobe to edit documents without having to print them out. You can use redaction tools in there as well. Create notes, handwrite, all of that stuff to make sure that you're communicating what needs to get done. This is an example of a document that needed to be edited. So I used those functions to communicate that. I did this from a tablet and then emailed it to my assistant to make those changes. If you aren't already using e-signatures, if you most project management software, Clio, Rocket Matter, all of those things have e-sign functions. Actually, Clio Grow and Clio Manage, if you're not familiar, Clio Grow was formerly Lexicata. Clio purchased that and now it's Clio Grow. Lexicata was a form building function that allowed for it. It's amazing. It does what Clio Grow does now. It's literally the same thing. But the back facing for that, what I'm trying to get to, the back facing for Clio in terms of e-signature is hello sign. If you don't have firm management software, or maybe you're doing something alternatively and you're not taking e-sign right now, I really encourage you to look at hello sign in terms of price, versatility, and user friendliness. Hello sign is a great option. Allows you to create forms, allows you to create workflows. It really is amazing, has evolved a lot since it first came onto the market in 2018. Of course, there's also things like DocuSign and Adobe Fill and Sign. Use what works best for you, but use something. Make sure you're getting those e-signatures and you're transitioning into methods that really incorporate and embrace paperless practices so your team can be more efficient and inspired. You'd be surprised how much this can excite people if they're not already involved with using it as standard practice, or maybe your team is and you're behind, you need to get on board and making sure you're keeping up with them. Virtual business cards have evolved quite a bit. If you use Vistaprint for printing your business cards, check out the My Card function is an app. They'll take your literal business card that you created with them and turn it into a virtual card for you, no charge. For a very small, very, very small fee, I recommend dbiz.com for an e-card. I love this. It generates a link that takes people on their phone to a virtual business card that looks like this, an evolved business card. As you can see, this is on the right-hand side of the screen. As you can see, I can incorporate pictures into my business card, and I can also create links that people can go to the website, book a consultation, call the office, go to my YouTube page, go to my Instagram. I can also have rotating pictures with clients, promoting that brand. At the bottom of the screen, bottom right-hand corner, include videos, lead messages, all gets into really allowing you to brand beyond what the traditional business card would do. These are great for if you're getting recommendations on Facebook, if people are recommending you and then you're wanting to put your information into the text box. If you put your DBiz card, it will pop up a link and a photo of whatever you put on your card. Allows you to go right there and book your consultation, get in touch with your office, see what you offer. It's great. Also, you can text these to people if someone is asking for your information to refer a client, etc. Collecting information without paper business cards. I love getting rid of paper business cards. Evernote is what I use for that. Evernote allows you to scan a business card, and as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, it actually inputs that person's information into your phone, saves it as a contact, and get this, when you're done saving it as a contact, and you don't type any of this, OCR reads it for you. You can then send an email saying it was nice meeting you, and then you send that email off to them, and then there includes your information that they can then save for their use. And that, talk about effective networking. Absolutely amazing. Collecting information from clients in a paperless fashion, electronic documents from clients, and streamlining the process. I recommend something called Pipefile. Pipefile allows you to create lists of documents that you're going to collect from the clients, whether it's on a one-time basis or a regular. You can send, and you can repeat the same request. So for example, if we're collecting documents for discovery in a family law case, I know I need W-2s, I know I need paychecks, I know I need tax returns, all of those things. And it will walk the client through collecting those documents and uploading them. And then if the client is unable to upload the document at that time, or maybe needs some more time to go and collect a certain document, they can skip that in the sequence of requests. And if they skip it, the system goes back and you tell them whether it's every 3 days or every 7 days to remind the client to then continues to remind them to upload it, that it still needs to be collected. And you're not sending out multiple emails or trying to track what's going on with collecting those electronic forms. You're not dealing with paper forms in the office. You're not waiting on things to come in the mail or trying to coordinate somebody coming down to the office. It's a beautiful thing. It's called Pipefile. Centralized note-taking for your team. Everybody should know what's going on in the, everybody should know what's going on or have the ability to access notes regarding the file. If we don't have a paper file, we're not all in the same place. We need a centralized note-taking system. There's lots of different ones. The one that I love is OneNote. It allows you to organize things like one of those five-star trapper keeper. Any 80s babies in here remember those? Those five-star notebooks that allowed you to stay organized. This is like five-star notebooks on, you know, I don't have a good expression. Five-star notebooks to the extreme. So you can have sections and then turn, you know, notebooks with sections in them, with tabs, with pages. And so for each one of our clients, we have a tab, and that's an ongoing rolling notes that anybody can access. So if I'm not available and someone needs to know what's going on in a case, or somebody talks to the client and needs to make a note of it to make sure that it's on record, because we document everything. They can do so without having to create duplicate, unnecessary, missing information, those types of things. It's a centralized note-taking place that I highly recommend. The OneNote, there's plenty of other options though. If you need ideas, please feel free to reach out to me. Ignite is what I've advanced to with regards to cloud storage system. We were using OneDrive for the longest, and I love OneDrive. I love Microsoft things in general. But one thing that I really like about Ignite, and also I didn't create a screenshot for it, but let me finish Ignite. So Ignite is a centralized file storage system. It backs up every night. I also have an external hard drive backup after being hacked. I learned my lesson with that with regards to someone trying to delete all my files. Pretty sure it was a disgruntled former employee, but that's another story. Point being, everything's backed up every night. This is a centralized place where everybody can access. People I grant access to, I can control and see who has accessed what documents and when. There's a running backlog, and lets me know when somebody opened something, how long they were in the document. All of those things allows me to really kind of beef up my security and make sure that I'm protecting my client's interest in my information. The second one I was going to mention is called clinked.com, CLINKED.com. For clinked.com, I use this purely for my estate planning practice. You can check it out. It allows for a client-facing view, CLINKED.com, a client-facing view where clients can see the documents you've uploaded. Not much different from Clio, although I do like the makeup of it better in terms of the visuals. And so we upload our estate planning documents there, both before the signing and after the signing. They have access to it to download the completed forms afterwards. The ignite.com I use for everything related to my team. So my teams can access everything here. It's not necessary to have both. It's just kind of how I like to keep things organized. All right. Getting into how you can keep your team motivated by making sure that you are staying motivated yourself. You can use these tools for yourself and for your team. One thing that happens with remote work, right, is procrastination. When we're away from other people, it can be hard to focus. I know a lot of people I work with report having a hard time staying focused in the house, which I totally get. That's not, I mean, it's a problem for anybody. It's not been a huge problem for me, but what I have found, there are tools to use with overcoming procrastination. I encourage you to not only use these yourself as a remote worker, but to encourage your team as remote employees to kind of use the same things. So there are 10 of them, I think. First, pick your poison. So if you got a whole bunch of things to do, you've been procrastinating and now your list is long. Don't try and do everything at once. Pick one thing to do to get started. Once you get in action, staying in action is much easier. So pick your poison, start with one, and go from there. Get started, first of all. Like I said, once in action, staying in action is easier. So, you know, once you realize you're procrastinating, do the best you can to get started immediately. 3, use a 5-minute miracle mindset. That essentially just means don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Give it a chance. Set a timer for 5 minutes and start working on the task. See how far you get. Either you'll abandon the progress you made or you won't, but studies find that once you start something, you're more likely to finish it. And then you can build on that And remember that small action is still action, period. And it'll slowly get you there in little parts if you need to. Schedule power hours. So, power hours where you work for a 20-minute interval and take a break for 5, work for 20 minutes, take a break for 5. And, goes hand in hand with working in sprints. Working in sprints just essentially means that you set a goal for you're going to check emails from 10:30 to 11:45, and then you'll take a break and read an article you've been meaning to read. Not trying to basically, eating the elephant one bite at a time, trying to take it in portions. Important thing to think about with procrastination, because we can really kind of beat ourselves up for this type of thing, but it's easy does it. Be kind to yourself, forgive yourself, it happens. But when it does happen, get under the hood and look at what the driving factor is. A lot of times fear is what's going on, and you need to address that before you're going to have any success overcoming it on a long-term basis. Don't be afraid to let things go. Sometimes I'm guilty of this. I create to-do lists that are really not feasible. And I know better, and I know it takes 2 hours to draft that motion. So why did I put 4 motions on my list for the day along with a whole bunch of other things? Don't be afraid to take it off the list and let it go. It doesn't necessarily have to be letting it go for good. Maybe just let it go for today or for today and tomorrow and coming back to it another time rather than seeing yourself overwhelmed. Clean up your space, make sure that you're organized and things are looking, things aren't distracting to you in terms of having a jumbled up space. And then lastly, share your story. So make sure you're sharing about, your experience with this, because nobody can help you if you don't let them know what's going on. An important part of that. So make sure you share those things with your team. Remember, an organized team begins with you. So when you have leadership and trust, you're more likely to retain high quality, high producing team members. When you're demonstrating, when you're communicating that mission, vision, those goals, and when you're demonstrating the practices, you're getting the trust, and you're being that leader, and you're more likely to retain the remote team members you want. So with that in mind, looking at how you spend your days, ending with the beginning in mind. So much of what we do in the morning is influenced by what we do or fail to do the night before. So this is just looking at some of our own personal practices. Are you getting enough sleep to be an effective leader? Some things that are helpful that I can't claim. Well, I've gotten better at some of them. Some of it has to do with being pregnant too. Drinking coffee is not an option, but turning off electronics before bed. Don't drink coffee 12 hours before bed. Skipping alcohol 2 hours before bed. Limiting screens, turning down lights, adjusting the blue lights on your phone, which is something that I learned a couple of years ago. It's helpful. Aromatherapy techniques, all of those things. Making sure you're getting a good night's sleep so you can be an effective leader the next day. Communicating these same wellness techniques to your staff, but demoing them first, not just preaching. Really kind of living it first. Practicing mindfulness and taking these types of practices to your work environment. Taking inventory on a regular basis, how things are going. This is especially true with everything we've been talking about today. How are the things that you're trying with regards to paperless practices or, keeping that team motivating? How are they going? Make sure you're checking in with yourself, journaling and stream of thought writing, reflecting on those things. End of day gratitude lists, making sure some days it's gonna feel like everything's going wrong. Can you tap into a gratitude list to kind of talk, make yourself aware of the things that are going right, and set intentions for the next day. Taking inventory at night is a very valuable habit. For me, this comes and goes, but when I am doing it is when I feel the most effective. Some common questions you can ask yourself: where have I done well today? Have I tried to help someone other than myself today? Have I behaved towards others in a way that I find acceptable? Did I have any fear or apprehension? What am I scared of today? Was I selfish or dishonest? Do I owe an apology? All of these things really help you be the best leader and the most effective team manager that you can be. And I recommend writing these things out so you can go back and read them. It helps you set intentions and goals for the next day. Actually, I should also point out that taking inventory doesn't have to be at night, although, it's kind of a good time to do it. You also might be tired. So maybe taking your inventory at 2 o'clock in the afternoon rather than waiting until your brain is ready to shut down. Just a thought there. Other tools for reflection, journaling. I already mentioned the gratitude list, meditation and prayer. If you're new to meditation, give yourself a break, allow yourself to build up. I recommend starting with 1 minute and building up on a minute each week, but being consistent, and don't judge yourself for how things go. Morning mindfulness, making sure you start your day off right, playing your first 3 minutes. They should be a minimum of 3 minutes that are just for you, not checking your phone, not checking your email. Remember that company culture, we're demonstrating that first. So not hopping on that email, not hopping on that social media, empowers you to start your day on your own terms, establishes an early state of mindfulness so you can carry on throughout the day. All of those things are part of what you bring to the work environment that you're trying to make sure that you're being a strong leader in. Some more optional morning routines include meditation and yoga, pet your dog, cat, or your lizard, play an instrument, really anything that allows you to stay in you and in the present is really what I recommend with regards to morning routines. And morning routines are really important because they set the tone for the day. Maybe you're an exerciser, so moving meditation, maybe you go for a run with or without music. But really the important part is paying attention to your breath, making sure you know what a calm breath feels and sounds like in your head, so that when things get agitated or you get bothered at work or with a team member, you know how to calm it down by using breath to get you through. Morning mantras: I am grateful, I am beautiful, I am powerful, I am becoming. Also a technique you can use, might feel silly at first, but really is effective if you're consistent with it and you're intentional. With regards to actually being successful in implementing a routine, keep it simple. Do not overcomplicate it. I'm an overthinker and I'm an overcomplicator. And make things way more complicated than they need to be on a regular basis. With the morning routine, just don't. Keep it simple. Start with one thing. Like, for example, you're going to drink water as soon as you wake up. So set a glass of water on the nightstand the night before. When you wake up, drink that glass of water. Start with that. Don't make it drink a glass of water, go do yoga, go, go read whatever and play this instrument. Keep it simple and then build on that. Keep it about yourself and do what works for you. Don't do what sounds good or what somebody said to do just because they said to do it. And then keep it going. Don't quit. Again, don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle. Be consistent for long enough for it actually to have some effect. Lastly, wellness for the remote professional. There are so many tools available to us. Fabulous. It's a great app that I've been encouraging people to use for a long time that specifically speaks to morning routines or routines in general and helps you through cognitive behavior and reinforcement, really kind of set routines in place. But also meditation, which I think is discussed a lot amongst attorneys, but there's so many apps for that as well. The Insight Timer is one of the most popular ones that I really would recommend. You can meditate with people all over the world. And there's so many free options for 3-minute meditation, 5-minute meditation, whatever you have time for, it can accommodate. So check out some of those apps. This has been an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, I'm Samra Stevenson, founder and CEO of S.A. Stevenson Law Offices, Wheels on Wheels, Office Without Walls, SAS Fit Practice, Virtual Office Solutions. I am an attorney, but I'm also a transformation coach, and I'm very passionate about talking about how to use technology and innovation to transform not just the way we work, but the way we live, and how we provide services to others. If you're interested in getting some more information about this presentation, feel free to reach out to me. My email is at the top of the screen. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you to my Linktree page where you can see any upcoming events we have, or engage with me in terms of setting up a consultation for maybe you want to talk about transforming your business, transform your work, transform your life. Maybe you're getting a business off the ground, whatever, going out on your own. All of those things are what I provide help with, and very passionate about doing that. It brings great joy to me to be able to share my experiences and help others to find their freedom in their business. So thank you again for joining me, and have a wonderful day. Don't forget, on Thursday, I'm presenting on paperless practices specifically and easy steps to go paperless. So join me again then.